Right, morning everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us this morning, where we're going to be looking at everything you need to know about the cloud, or as I'm going to call it, demystifying the cloud. So first of all, just to introduce myself, I'm Simon G. I'm a business development manager here at ACUTEC. I'm also joined by Irfan Azar, our technical manager.
Hi guys.
And also Amy Stanishevsky.
Hello.
That's not easy to say. Who's also organised the event today, so a big thanks to Amy. And as I said, I really want to take the next sort of 15 to 20 minutes, really focus on demystifying the cloud. I think Amy's got a couple of housekeeping things that she just wants to touch on here.
Okay, so the first thing is, if you're calling in, you should be muted, but just be aware that you might come off mute for some reason. So we have had one person keeps coming off mute. So if you could just keep the volume low, that would be great. The other thing is, please feel free to ask any questions throughout the presentation. You can ask questions here, so I'm just going in the box here on the message box. So you can just see me popping up. Please feel free to give me any questions at all and we'll get those answered for you. Okay, so back over to Simon.
Right, thank you, Amy. I'm going to start off nice and simply, really, because the big question is, what is the cloud? And I know we've got a mixture of audience here where, if I'm not being too rude to anyone, we've got some people who are probably a bit more technical than others. The idea of this is to give a broad landscape of what it is. So I hear lots of terms, Irfan, about what the cloud is, hosting, stuff in the sky. So in very non-technical terms, that's the challenge for you, Irfan, as a technical manager. What is the cloud?
So I have to answer the difficult big question.
Correct.
What the hell is cloud? Yeah, so as Simon said, there are people on the call that really are not technical at all, and the management and the operational, and there are some technical managers on the phone as well. So I want to keep this simple, but if you want any further detail, please give me a call directly. Now, demystifying the cloud, that's how you want it done, Simon, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to demystify and simplify it as I possibly can. The cloud is a bunch of servers sitting normally in Dublin. Yes, you heard that right, Dublin, with a really good internet connection between you and it. Really, that's the cloud. It's that simple. It's a very boring building, and they're called data centers, and they've got lots of computers and servers stuff in it. Right. For those of you that like the more techie stuff, I've been there. I was really excited. I went to the Microsoft Cloud, and it's a data center in Dublin with some amazing compute power with phenomenal security, and we'll go over that a bit later, but that's simply how to put it. It is a bunch of data centers, a bunch of servers. Now, why I choose Dublin is because the three real big cloud providers, Google, Amazon, and Microsoft, are all in Dublin. So, and it gives it some real reality, doesn't it, Simon? When I say Dublin, you can physically see the buildings there, and
Yeah.
The reason they pick that location is because the ambient air temperature, the cooling costs are quite low. You don't need it freezing, you need it a nice temperature, and the Microsoft data center only uses 2 weeks of cooling all year, Simon, so that's interesting.
So just to rein you in a little bit there, Irfan, what we're really saying, the simple reality is that the cloud is a big data centre, which is a big office block, highly secure, and it's got a load of servers in and security in there.
Yeah, well, it's more like a warehouse, and it's lots of computers. Now, it's like a big generator facility like you would have for electricity. It does the same for computers.
I think that's always, me and Irfan do quite a lot of work together, and that's something that me and Irfan spent quite a bit of time reflecting on what the cloud is as well, in terms of these days, do I really need a server in my building? And I always remember Irfan telling me, well, we used to have generators in our house, we don't anymore.
Well,
we've got connectivity to a generator somewhere else.
Yeah, so what I was saying was, it still happens in some of the less developed countries where businesses have their own generators, diesel generators, just in case the electricity grid goes down. We are lucky here that we have a reliable national grid, and therefore we can turn on a light switch. Now, think of compute the same way as energy. That's the way it's going. It's becoming a utility. And instead of you sitting there with your server in your office generating that computer power, and managing it and looking after it and cooling it. Now, Microsoft or Amazon or Google have said, we'll have these massive compute-generated places called data centers, and we'll deliver the compute to you over a line called an internet connection. So that's what the cloud is. It's a bunch of servers in a data center delivering to you via the internet.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you, Irfan. One of the things that I have a lot of conversation with people, and you hear it, not just people I'm speaking to, but about security. You know, is data safe in the cloud? Are my servers safe in the cloud? Who can get there? So you can see this slide here, demystifying security, and we'll put a you versus Microsoft. So I'm going to start with the easy bit and talk about what we perhaps have at the moment if you're not using cloud services at the moment. So if I typically go into any site and they may have a server or a few servers, and they may be in a rack, and that rack may be and should be locked. And often the case is then to take that a step further, that rack sits in a room designated for IT infrastructure, and again that's locked. Shouldn't be left open, people. Then if I look at the building itself, hopefully we're locking our building at night. You may also have an alarm, you may have CCTV, and we're protecting the way of getting to our devices. It's very easy if you leave all of those open that someone goes in and does something to your server, but we obviously put security there. So let's talk about what Microsoft have got in terms of protecting that kit first of all. Okay,
so what you've talked about specifically, Simon, is the physical protection of the servers. I don't think that's the only concern, but let's talk about that. I'm going to lay it out there. There is no one on this call, ACUTEC themselves can protect the physical infrastructure like Microsoft can, because there are bomb blast barriers in Dublin. There are biometric entrance systems. You need a passport or ID to even get past the first level of the building. Everything is set to fail over on multiple occasions. There are over 12 £1 million diesel generators sitting there doing nothing, 2 separate diesel suppliers, 2 separate energy suppliers. Nothing sits on a single disk. It's designed to fail over on different data disks.
I think that's a brilliant fact and a brilliant thing that I'd ask everyone at this particular stage. What happens if there's a failure to your device?
Yeah.
And you know, that's a strong message that when it's on premise, there's quite a large investment on kit in case something happens. Do you want to kind of expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so physically what we'll probably have on you, if everyone on this call wants to look at their server, they'll probably see a single box. Some of you might have multiple physical boxes, and then attached to that will be something like a UPS. That stands for uninterruptible power supply, just in case you have a power surge. That's there. You'll also have some kind of backup, and that is for 2 reasons: to protect the data, but also if the physical hardware fails, so you can take the data and put it onto a separate piece of physical hardware. So what we're trying to say here is that no one really has the investment that Microsoft has when it comes to protecting physical servers. Now, I think it's important to address physical server security isn't the only concern, but like you, I've walked past many a server room and seen the server door open, the server rack open, and anybody could pull any cable out or push anything in. So there are other concerns.
So if I talk, I'm going to go slightly off field here, but Irfan, to put you on the spot, can we get hacked if we have our servers on premise?
Well, physically, yes, because someone can walk in if you had someone who's malicious within the business, and you might have a disgruntled employee. It's quite easy to put a USB stick into the server, but also there are other methods of getting past the perimeter, like a firewall and so on, and they can be bypassed. The firewall security at Microsoft is much more substantial than the one we could provision on any premises.
Okay, so basically, just to confirm that, again, just going back to the Microsoft data center, there then is the security, not just the locked door scenario, but in terms of remote and access and breaking through ports, etc.
Yeah.
You know, if we look at what perhaps we've all got on our infrastructures, if we've got them on premise, we're going to spend X amount on devices to protect us. Microsoft basically got a huge budget and therefore have invested.
So I'm going to be clear here. The weakest link always in security are the end users and our people. And the way Microsoft have decided to mitigate that risk at data centers, as you can imagine, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of connections into those data centers, is to make sure nobody on site at a Microsoft data center can physically get to any data. The data management part, so the support, if there's any problems with the data or the software, is managed from London in this scenario for Microsoft, and the other providers do something similar. So there's a physical separation between the people who work in the data center and look after the physical hardware and the people who can access the data. So there is no way you could just go in and get data off the physical hardware at Microsoft. Now, I know you've got some questions about data security.
Yeah, I think, you know, in the current, you know, ransomware attacks that we're hearing, you know, we've all got budgets that we have to meet to protect our infrastructures, and I'm talking from an on-premise world here, and that budget often detects how much security I can put on there. So I want you to kind of elaborate on what the cloud offering can give us there.
Okay, so I'm going to start with something obvious, but also probably what you don't want to hear is everything is penetratable at some point. And what you as a consumer of cloud services, ACUTEC as a cloud service provider and partner, and Microsoft have to accept is that there is always going to be the users being the weakest access. Now, if you've got your data in the Microsoft cloud and you have access to it because you've got a username and password, and you leave your username and password stuck on your screen or share it with somebody and they access your data and then delete all your data, there's very little Microsoft or ACUTEC can do to mitigate that risk. I hope you understand that. But those of you concerned with the cloud must be concerned about security, and what you can do is go to the Microsoft Azure Trust Center. It's a brilliant website. It shows you all the ISO accreditations Microsoft have, and the accreditations Microsoft have, it'd be hard for other companies to achieve because of the amount of investment needed.
So just to again round that answer into a simple solution.
Yeah.
The answer is the cloud is secure.
The cloud is securer than 99.9% of on-premise solutions.
Lovely. Okay.
It depends which cloud. If
Microsoft.
Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and so on are big providers.
Okay. So hopefully we've kind of given you a little bit of information on what the cloud is. Hopefully we've given you a little bit of clarification about the security of the cloud. So let's talk about how we start that journey. One thing that I think we advise at ACUTEC is that just because the cloud is there, that we need to suddenly throw everything and all of our infrastructure into the cloud. And that our approach is very much that we should be doing it as a one step at a time solution. As we put there, migrate one thing first. Satisfy yourself that that's providing what you need it to do, and then you want to roll the rest of the business. It can be a big impact if we try to do everything at once. And the term hybrid is massively important, I think, and that at the moment is where we see the benefit of the cloud, that there is a little bit of on-premise infrastructure required. However, let's also use the powers of the cloud as well, and that can come in various different...
Simon, how do you eat an elephant?
Well,
one bite at a time. It's as simple as that. So do not, my advice is, even though I'm a cloud advocate, do not jump in both free and without understanding what your requirements are. Move one application to start off with and see how that goes. And email's a good place to start.
Yeah. I think, yeah, you just linked onto it there, you know, emails or Office 365, you know, again, we're focused on Microsoft today, just purely because we think that's the best. We're a Microsoft house. This may be the first step of that journey. It's a very logical and straightforward step as well. Office 365, you know, for those that don't know, it's got your full Microsoft Office suite, it's got your emails in there, it's taking your Exchange off of your server, and Exchange is quite a high impact on your server. It takes a lot of resource of that and let the server do, you know, and deal with files in a very smooth and efficient way. So it's a very, very basic step forward, if you like.
Can I very quickly explain,
Of course,
how Office 365 works in the cloud discussion we're having right now?
Yep.
Company A has got a server on premises. They might have a couple, but they've at least got one, and that might do the email. What you do is you no longer buy a server and put Exchange on it, and then get your email delivered via that box. What is an easy thing to get rid of is that physical box and the software license for Exchange and all the client access licenses that might go along with it and the cost. And what you can do now is just let Microsoft handle the email exchange and deliver it via something called Office 365 Exchange Online, and you'll get your email. What you've purchased there is something called software as a service. You're not worrying about the hardware, you're not worrying about the operating system, and you purchase the software on a subscription basis.
Lovely, thank you, thank you. The other area that I've just put is kind of some of the benefits of going down the cloud route. And particularly in the SMB market, I think this is relevant. But again, just to emphasise, cloud is a very scalable product. Whether you're a 1, 2, 3 user, or whether you're, you know, in the thousands, it really is a very scalable product. The nice thing, and we'll use Office 365 as an example here, you don't have to kind of have a huge capital expenditure on it. You can pay monthly, you can up and down if needed the amount of users and things like that, and that can be a huge benefit from the finance side of the organisation to know exactly what your budgets are for IT.
Here you go, Simon. Imagine a 3-user site and they need email, enterprise level email. They can get it for £3 per user per month, less than that. But that would be the same solution that someone like Ford or Barclays would be using. So you're getting an enterprise level solution as a small business because it's one product for all, pretty much. So, okay, the bells and whistles change, Simon, what you get if you pay a bit more, but the fundamental, the basic package is the same.
That's it. The other thing that I've got on this slide, but I want you to kind of stick away a little bit from Office 365 and just think about the software that we have in the cloud, is the accessibility as well. We've got a couple of examples. Hotmail, I'm going to pick on Spotify in this particular case. I'm sure many of you have got things such as Spotify, and the great benefit is you can go anywhere, sign in and listen to it. You don't have to be next to a server, or you don't have to be in your house at that particular time. You can go, and as long as you've got connectivity, to going back to that first part that we talked about, cloud, you are just connecting to a server in the cloud essentially for your Spotify.
Facebook and WhatsApp do the same thing. They're pieces of software that you just use.
Yeah, bring that into the work life, and let's think about access to our work systems. Some of you may use
Sage,
Salesforce or Sage, you know. These are all things, by having it in the cloud, gives you that much more mobility. And these days, you know, traffic doesn't get any better, let's put it that way. So let's continue with that. Continue on the journey side of things. I'll give you an example. We might put a little bit of software in Microsoft 365. I remember a few years ago now, when the cloud was a little bit fresher in its day, and I was trying to find out a little bit more myself before I had the expertise of Earthing with it. And you Google the cloud, and it come up categorized, so infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, or even better, IaaS, PaaS and SaaS. And I thought, that really isn't helping me. Do I want to read 15 pages of information to try and get to the bottom of it? No. So I'm giving Earthing now the real job here of demystifying what each of those three. We have touched a little bit on software as a service.
I'm going to have to say, Simon, I love talking about this topic, so please stop me if I keep going on, because this is my favourite bit. But we're going to break it down into 3, and I'm going to try and keep it as simple as possible. If you have a physical server on premise, you can turn it on, you can turn it off, you can put an operating system of your choice on it, you can put an application on it, you can then access that operating system and make tweaks and changes, and then you can put another operating system on it. So you physically have that piece of kit there. What infrastructure as a service is saying is that we will rent you a physical piece of kit in a data center that will allow you to turn it on and off, and it will allow you to put a piece of software on there, and it will allow you to put an operating system on there. Just remember, if you buy a server, you need to then normally have someone like ACUTEC or have an IT team that will manage and look after that server. Infrastructure as a service is no different, Simon. If you rent a server, Microsoft expects you to look after the operating system and the piece of software that sits on it. So that includes, you have to put the antivirus, you have to put the security updates on it, so you're renting a server.
So it's exactly the same as having a server on premise, but we're renting it.
And you're not paying for energy consumption, you're not paying for cooling, you're not paying for the physical hardware failures because it's set up in next to another server that if it fails over to the other server.
Lovely.
So you're just renting the physical hardware. You're responsible for everything else after that.
Excellent. So,
Simon, if it stops working and it's not the hardware, which it's unlikely to be, it's your responsibility as the person who's consuming it to get it back up and running, not Microsoft's.
Okay, so let's move on then to platform as a service, because that, I think, will demystify the infrastructure as a service a little bit more as well.
Brilliant. Now, if there are listeners and you are interested in a line of business application, so you might be in marketing, you might be in accounts, and you want to buy a piece of software that helps you do your part of the job. So it's not Windows operating systems, it might be Sage. It might be Salesforce because you're a salesperson. It might be an ERP system of some sort. It might be a piece of glass cutting software. What Microsoft do is they will give you the physical hardware and they will give you the operating system, and they are responsible for both, and they will give you the application underlier, which it might be a database like SQL Server. Sorry if I'm getting too technical, but you might need, your application provider, your line of business provider might say, oh yeah, this runs on SQL, so you don't have to buy the SQL licenses, you just rent the physical hardware, the operating system, and the SQL, and guess what? Microsoft look after all of it. They patch it, they make it fail over, and the only thing you will be responsible for is that piece of software that sits on top of it. So you're still responsible for Sage. Anything goes wrong with Sage, Simon, you and your Sage partner will have to fix it. Everything below Sage, Microsoft will be responsible for.
Right, okay, so you're getting the full package really, apart from
the software.
A piece of software, which leads us nicely onto software as a service.
Right. So,
you talked about, if we take Salesforce, which I think is probably quite a good example, how does that sit in with our...
So if you subscribe to Salesforce, you are, as a company, not responsible for the physical hardware it sits on. So Salesforce is in Amazon. You're not responsible for the physical hardware it sits on. You're not responsible for the operating system. You're not responsible for managing the patches or security. All you're doing is subscribing to the software, and actually you're not even responsible for keeping the software up to date. Salesforce does all that. And it's the same with Exchange Online. You're not responsible for patching Exchange. You'll just get your email. Another one is Xero. It's an accounts package like Sage and Sage 1 now.
I know there's some Navision listeners on here as well. So
and Navision Online and Microsoft Dynamics is going that way as well. You can have both flavors where you are responsible for certain components, or you can just subscribe to it where the software just does what it's supposed to and you do not need anyone in IT to look after it. So you don't need that management of it. So that's the fundamental difference, is that it's software delivered to you as a service, like Spotify, like WhatsApp in your personal life, or like email and Salesforce in your professional lives.
Perfect. I don't have to worry about patches, I don't have to worry about updates, I don't have to worry about, is my server going to cope with it?
No.
It's just going to work for me, and I just pay on a monthly basis how that works.
And it should work on your laptop, your phone, and your tablets and whatever. So Mac, Windows, doesn't make a difference.
Okay. I'm obviously conscious of everyone's time, and I think the idea of today, thank you Irfan by the way, is just to kind of give you a little bit of a demystifying area. Hopefully that's covered what the cloud is, the security elements that the cloud is a very secure entity, how we can perhaps tackle that journey and not to throw everything as a all of our
one step at a time.
That's it, the elephant scenario, that's the one. And also a little bit about kind of the different areas of a cloud that you can have. we would love the chance to come and talk to you about it more if you want some more detail. We'll also send some information out, I believe, Amy.
Yes, and all webinar attendees have a free cloud guide available to them at the link, which I am now also
Is that
going.
free?
Free.
Wow,
Completely
anything free these days.
I'm just sending the link for that right now.
So, is there any questions that we've got on there, Amy?
I've actually had been sent a question from a lady who's called in, so she's had to email it to me, and she's asked. She's a solicitor and she wants to know how that works with solicitors, because obviously there's more security issues for them.
Can I jump in on the very first thing, because we've had discussions with solicitors. It's a very good question. First of all, we've had quite a lot of conversations, probably over the last 2 or 3 years, from a solicitor, legal entity. One thing I think I'm just going to start off with was that there was always a concern of where the data was held. There is now at least 2 data centres in the UK, and it is literally being put in mainly for that reason. But I'm sure everyone's got a couple of things that you want to.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't think this is a technical driver. You might think it is. It's a commercial driver. Microsoft wants lots of solicitors and accountants, and so does Google and so does Amazon, to subscribe to their services. Now, there are 2 new data centres in the UK, primarily focused on government, but you can access them. And they're slightly higher price, but that's not an issue compared to Dublin or Amsterdam. Now I'm going to explain a German scenario to you. The Germans are very finicky about the Americans being able to get access to their data. Microsoft have gone as far as submitting all control of data access to an intermediary, similar to we have PricewaterhouseCoopers in this country, or Deloitte, or one of the big accountancy firms, and said, right, now there is an intermediary that manages the data request and acquisition. We can't hand that data over to anybody. So solicitors in the UK, but an example is in Germany, have the confidence they can use this service, knowing that a government authority or somebody can't come and take their data because it can be quite sensitive. Okay. The Parliament, the UK Parliament, is using Office 365, and a lot of, not all of, but a lot of the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority, is using cloud services. So
data protection is covered essentially.
The Ministry of Defence is using it.
It absolutely is, but that does not mean this is for every single person. Please do your due diligence. Speak to us, speak to other partners you have around security, and consider what legal implications they have. But ACUTEC ourselves, we do have solicitor firms that are using cloud services.
Okay, thank you, Irfan. Hopefully that answers your question. Is there any other questions there, Amy?
Is there a question about the Trust Centre, Amy?
Yes, Tracy did ask about the Trust Centre. We will drop you a link for that. I don't know if everyone wants to.
No, it's a really good website for those who of us might be geeks, and it tells you all the accreditations and certifications. So ISO 2000 series is covered there, and you know, Microsoft have really pushed the boat out for all the accreditations. They've tried to get every single security accreditation they possibly can. They want to be the most secure. And unlike Google, they're not selling any information to anybody. It is secure because their clientele is business, not consumer. They don't mine your data in any way to sell on to anybody else.
Okay, lovely.
I've had another email. Someone's asked about their own personal backups and how that works. So is there any way that works with the cloud? Yeah,
so there are free solutions like OneDrive for personal, and you can store data in there. It's not quite a backup, but it's an off-site location that you can access from anywhere, and a business version is called OneDrive for Business. So there are plenty of places you can save your pictures, iCloud if you've got a iPhone, or Google Photos. So those things personal to you can be saved in the cloud.
I think something I'd like to jump on that we didn't mention just very quickly. Another thing that we're to start that journey of the cloud as well is the way that your data is backed up. You know, I'm hoping that most of you got a backup solution that's an image level backup. The way that Microsoft particularly works, we can now do backups to the cloud. We can also do site recovery to the cloud as well. So what we're really referring to there is that if there is a failure to your infrastructure that is on premise
or in the cloud,
or in the cloud, very good point, then we can deliver a service which actually allows you to boot into the cloud.
I need to be clear here.
Device.
If you go for infrastructure as a service or platform as a service, Simon, I made it clear earlier, you are responsible for the virus protection and the backup of that data. The only time where you're not is it's when it's software as a service, because you are normally within that software as a service purchasing the backup and data protection. With Office 365 and email, it's slightly different. You have to, it's an add-on to make sure you have got that backup of data. So it is important for you to still continue the backup of data, because just because it's somewhere else doesn't mean it's not your responsibility to make sure it's covered. So it's something to consider.
We don't seem to have any questions anymore today on the chat. Chat seems quiet today.
Okay, brilliant.
Okay, well, what I'll do is I'll take this opportunity just to say thank you to everybody. You know that where we are. Our phone number is plastered on there. I'm sure you've got it anyway. So please, if you've got any other information that you'd like to find out, please feel free to contact us. We're going to stay in line for the next couple of minutes. Feel free to remain on if you have any other questions, and we'll answer them accordingly. But thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
We will mute ourselves while we wait for any questions to come through, just so you don't have to listen to us breathing. There you go. See you soon. Okay, there doesn't seem to be any questions, so we're going to say bye for now. So thank you. Please get in contact if there are any more questions. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.